This is part 5 of the biggest what ifs in the theme park industry. If you have an idea for a future episode, you can leave it in a comment down below, starting with the words what if. For now though, let's get into it. Saucy 55 on. What if Maverick kept its Heartline roll? So if you're not familiar, Maverick at Cedar Point was originally supposed to have a Heartline roll in addition to the layout it has today. This coaster is built by Intamin and opened in 2007 at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, Cedar Fair's flagship park. The ride only has a 105-foot height, but it has 4,450 feet of track, a speed of 70 miles an hour, a couple of launches, and 2 inversions. Though again, that was originally going to be 3. After the ride's second launch, you'd rise up a big hill before diving to the right and going into this Heartline roll. It would be a fast-paced maneuver, probably kind of like the Mosasaurus roll at Velocicoaster Islands of Adventure. After some testing, they deemed that this element put too much stress on the trains, so they took it out in favor of a S-bend style maneuver, which is fine for people who don't know it, but for those of us who do, we have to wonder, what could this coaster have been like if it still had the Heartline roll? On paper, this would make Maverick an overall better experience, but here's the problem. This was taken out because it was putting stress on the trains, as I said, but also because it may have caused discomfort for those riding the attraction. So, in order to keep this element and have it be a good part of the ride, they would have probably had to modify it in some fashion. Maybe elongate it a bit so it wasn't as snappy. I'm not entirely sure what they could have done here, but maybe something along those lines. I think that if they'd figured out how to make this element A, safe for the trains, and B, safe and comfortable for the riders, it could have been the best part of Maverick, and I can't wait to ride this coaster one day. Goliath. What if Smiler and Nemesis were never built? So this question is oriented towards Alton Towers and the Alton Towers Resort in the UK. This park originally opened in 1980 and has since become one of Europe's premier theme parks, and in my opinion is the premier theme park in the United Kingdom. Nemesis, now Nemesis Reborn, originally opened in 1994, and it was a B&M inverted coaster that brought a lot of people to the park. In 2013, they added the Smiler, which has the world's most inversions on a single coaster, with a ridiculous 14. There's no doubt that both of these coasters have helped this park's development tremendously, especially, I think, when you look at the former, Nemesis. Nemesis is one of the best B&M inverts ever built, and it was this park's first major thrill coaster, opening in 1994, as I said. The only coaster from that time in this park's history that is still operating is Runaway Mine Train, which is a Mock Rides family-powered coaster. Not exactly the same thrill level as Nemesis, obviously. So I think Nemesis really did help put Alton Towers on the map, in particular with thrill seekers. I think this point is further fleshed out when you look at their next major coaster edition, Oblivion, in 1998, the world's first B&M dive coaster. Obviously they liked working with B&M, so they got a revolutionary ride concept. And while it isn't that great for today's standards, it was quite the ride when it opened back in '98. These two rides were kind of the building blocks, I think, to making Alton Towers what it is today. Now, Smiler opened in 2013, and while I do think it had a big impact on the development of Alton Towers as well, a lot of the groundwork had already been laid by some of those previous attractions. Remember, the question read, what if Smiler and Nemesis were never built? I think it's more important if Nemesis was never built, because if Smiler was never built, people would still go to Alton Towers. There's no doubt about it. But if Nemesis was never built, it's hard to say where this park might be today. I think they could still be a very quality park, but that ride really helped them along in so many ways. If there are any UK coaster enthusiasts out there, let me know what you think down in the comments. Jonah Rumfola, what if Hershey destroys Chocolate World for more coasters? So this is interesting. Hershey Park is one of the biggest independent parks in the entire world. They opened their gates all the way back in 1906. Since then, they've added 20 coasters, with 14 still remaining today. It really is one of America's best coaster collections. Pennsylvania's biggest theme park, and definitely a bucket list park for me. Now, this question doesn't technically deal with Hershey Park itself. It deals with the attraction right next door, Hershey's Chocolate World. It's free to enter, and I'm sure they have basically every type of chocolate you could think of in there. They also, interestingly, have a dark ride, which is pretty neat, taking you through the process of how a Hershey's bar is made. This would be the reason why I would stop by Hershey's Chocolate World. It's located right next to the park, and it's worth visiting, I think, if you're going to the amusement park already. But the question is, what if we were to remove this entire attraction and make room for more coasters for Hershey Park. I absolutely love roller coasters. I'm sure that's not a surprise given this channel's theme, but I don't think it's a necessary move, and I don't think it would really help them in the long run. I think they'd end up losing money, and they would face significant backlash from the public, and I wouldn't blame them. Hershey Park already has a good amount of coasters and a very solid lineup. Quality and quantity. They don't really need more, especially at the expense of this historic attraction. So I tend to believe that this would be a bad idea and Hershey should stay away from it. The coaster maker. What if the Intimidators were swapped? This is a really good question. So the Intimidator coasters were given to King's Dominion and Carowinds respectively in the Cedar Fair chain. Both of these would be tall speed machines, but very different rides. They both opened in 2010. I-305 at King's Dominion, now Project 305 because it lost the Dale Earnhardt theme, would be an intimate giga coaster featuring lots of intensity. Right out of the gate, this 305-foot tall, 90-mile-an-hour coaster was loved by coaster enthusiasts, but that didn't exactly translate to the general public. This ride is a lot, and unfortunately, when it opened, it was causing blackouts. That's right, blackouts for many riders, which isn't ideal. Because of that, King's Dominion went through a couple different measures. Originally, they put a trim brake on the first drop to slow you down before that first intense turn, and then they reprofiled it and took the trim brake out. So this coaster has been running with minimal blackouts ever since, but it was still a headache for both Cedar Fair and King's Dominion alike. This is a sharp contrast with Intimidator, now Thunder Striker at Carowinds. This B&M hypercoaster was loved by coaster enthusiasts and the public from day one. Carowinds praised working with B&M, and they really enjoyed the experience, and the ride came out to be smoother than they were expecting it to be. Again, a sharp contrast with I-305. Since then, Carowinds has become one of the favorites of the Cedar Fair chain, getting multiple new roller coasters, including a Giga and a Mach Multi-Launch, expensive additions. King's Dominion did get Twisted Timbers, but otherwise they've removed Volcano to Blast coaster, which was a beloved coaster in the park, and in general haven't gone down the same level of success that Carowinds has. The Intimidator coasters could have factored in, but I do think the bigger reason for the varying levels of success at these parks is tax incentives. At Carowinds, they secured over $900,000 in tax incentives, and so I think that was a major cause for the success of the Carowinds park. King's Dominion didn't get that, and that's a big factor to be considered. So, in general, if the Intimidator coasters were swapped, I think that A, Carowinds wouldn't have Fury 325, and B, maybe King's Dominion would be in a better spot, but ultimately, I think Carowinds might still be the better park because of the fact that they got that tax incentives. I should give credit where credit is due. Most of the things I just said came from Airtime Thrill's in-depth video on this exact subject, so I'll link that down below if you're interested. But in the meantime, casual memer, what if Six Flags Great Adventure gets their Giga? First of all, I don't think this is happening. It's Six Flags, and I can't see them splurging for a Giga coaster at this point. If they did receive a Giga, in particular one from B&M, then Six Flags Great Adventure may just have the best top 5 of any park in the world. Seriously, it would be epic. That said, there's really not a whole lot more I can say here. I don't think this is going to happen. It would make Six Flags Great Adventure even better than it already is, but I think that's pretty much the end of it. Last one for this episode comes from Liam Collinson. What if Universal buys PortAventura? I'm going to keep this one short and simple, but before I answer it, let me introduce PortAventura just a bit. This resort opened back in 1995, and it now features 2 full-fledged theme parks along with multiple hotels and all the offerings that you'd expect from a major theme park resort. When people make lists of their favorite theme parks and resorts in Europe, this is always in the top 5 from what I've seen. It's a bucket list resort, absolutely. Now, Universal has shown interest in buying this resort. PortAventura doesn't need help being awesome. That said, I think if Universal bought it, it would make the place better. In particular, in 2 areas. One is going to be operations and general theme park policies. Universal runs their parks extremely well. So I think PortAventura could run better on a day-to-day basis, but in addition, I think especially over time, the dark ride collection could improve. The PortAventura resort does have a couple, but Universal really specializes in dark rides and well-themed attractions, just like Disney. So my final thesis is that while they don't need it to be an awesome park, I think it would make them a lot better. So there is episode 5 of the biggest what ifs in the theme park industry. Again, if you have ideas for episode 6, comment down below starting with the words what if. Even though it's all hypothetical, I enjoyed the series and I hope you do too. I'm going to try to get videos out a bit more often. I apologize for the delay, but it is what it is. Thanks for coming and supporting anyway, and I'll see you all next time.